I hope you enjoy this tutorial. You are going to need some yarn and a hook that is recommended for the yarn that you are using. First of all, we want to make our slip knot. Easy way to do this is to put your left hand piece over your right hand piece, creating a loop. You want to fold the loop down, placing your hook underneath the center and up, grabbing both pieces of yarn and pulling. You've created your slip knot. We want to chain 5 and joining to the first stitch with a slip stitch. We now want to work into the center of our work here. We're going to put a single crochet, so going into the middle, wrapping our yarn and pulling through. We have 2 loops on our hook, wrapping our yarn, pulling through. We've just made our single crochet. Now we want to make 2 chains, going back down into the center of our loop that we are still holding on to. We want to do a single crochet, so into the loop, yarning over, pulling up a loop. We have 2 on our hook, yarning over, pulling through 2. We want to chain 2, going back down into our loop, pulling up a loop, pulling through 2, and then chaining 2. And we want to repeat this all the way around until we have 15 single crochets into the middle of our ring. If you can fit more than 15, you're more than welcome to put more in. There's no exact science with this flower. If you can't fit 15, fit as many as you can into the center ring. So single crocheting into the ring and chaining 2, single crochet into the ring and chaining 2. And what we are doing is we are creating some little loops where our chains are. We've got little spaces there. That is what we're working into on our next round. So continue on and I will meet you up at the end of this row. Here's a little hint for you also. See how now I haven't got 15 on there, but I'm up to the end. If we grab hold of our work up here and holding here, you're able to push that bit around and we've just created more gap. So pushing that around, it makes it so you can fit a lot more stitches into your loop. So we have just finished off our chain 2, and now we just want to slip stitch into the first single crochet here. If you can't find the top of it, it doesn't matter too much because you're not going to see it anyway. So just going down into that first single crochet, making a slip stitch, and this is securing that row closed. So now what we want to do is find our next chain 2 space. So it's just a matter of using your fingers and just finding that next loop space. We want to go into that with our hook and we're just going to slip stitch into that space. So we've gone into the loop, wrapping our yarn over and then pulling it through the loop. So we are now into this chain 2 space. What we want to do is make 10 chains, and then going back down into the loop that we are working into, we want to slip stitch. See if I can show this a bit better. So that's the loop we're working into where my nail is there. We're going back down into that loop and then we're securing this chain 10 here with a slip stitch. So grabbing our yarn and then pulling it through that stitch, and we want to do another chain 10. And we're going to slip stitch back down into that same loop space we're working out of. Now this is a new camera, so this is the first time I've done a crochet tutorial with it. So we're going to see how it turns out. Hopefully it's pretty good. And what we want to do is work 3 petals into that chain 2 space. So we've got our 2, we need to do another chain 10 to make our third. Lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you do lose count on one, if you change, it's not going to matter too much, because there's going to be so many of them. So going back down into that same space here, we're working out of this one, and then slip stitching to secure it. So what we should have is our chain 2 space there, and we've got 3 petals coming out of that space. Now our next bit, we want to chain 10. It's always chaining 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we're going to work into our next chain 2 space from the previous row. So just using your fingers, there we go, it's just here, going into that space and slip stitching to secure our petal. So now we want to work another chain 10. You've probably figured out what we're going to do all the way around by now. Going into that chain 2 space that we're working into with a slip stitch, doing another chain 10, going back down into that same chain 2 space with a slip stitch, and what do we have now? We have 2 into that space, and what we're going to end up is 3 into our chain 2 space and then 1 sort of in between it. So it was the first 3 go into our chain 2 space, the next one sort of goes in between the chain 2 spaces. So in the next one we want to make 3 into there. So we've got 2 because it's 1, 2, 3 in the first. The fourth one's in between, so it's 1, 2, and another one makes 3 into our chain 2 space. And you want to repeat this all the way around our flower. You'll feel like you'll never get to the end. But what it does is it creates fullness, which is what we want with our petals. So go all the way around, and I'll catch up to you when you get back to the start again. So what you should have is this mass of chains, which creates our flower. So what we want to do, and I hope you can see this because we've got such a massive chains, we are going to, so this is our last set of chain 10s. We are just going to slip stitch back down into our chain 2 space like we have done before. Sorry, I'm losing my yarn. And then just want to secure this with our slip stitch.